I'm Pete Komet, Mayor of Tumwater, and thank you for coming to our first community meeting on the Brewery District, planning for what we call the Brewery District. You'll learn more about what that means tonight. I hope many of you have had an opportunity to look at the various displays that are around, that were in the lobby as well as around here. Staff will be providing a summary of that information, but you're certainly welcome to continue to look at that. And much of that information is posted on our webpage, as I understand it. So on behalf of the Tumwater City Council, I would like to welcome you here this evening. This is a great opportunity for you to have input into how this part of Tumwater, how you think this part of Tumwater should ultimately develop in the future. We know that at some point in time, the brewery itself is going to redevelop, and that is obviously going to have some pretty significant impacts on this part of the city. It's been a long time since the brewery's been operating. I was counting the other day, I think it's been 7 years since the brewery closed, which is a long time. And there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to try and make something happen there. We've got a full-time project manager, Michael Mathias. Michael, are you in the room somewhere? I thought I saw him earlier. He's back in the hallway there. He's working with the Economic Development Council and with funding from the city and the council to try and make something happen there. Of course, it's in private ownership for a large. So for a large part, we're relying on that. There's a lot of loose ends that really need to be tied together before we can really see something happen there. Okay. So I've been told I have to stand over here because there's a television microphone. Thanks, Deb. This is a little more difficult now. We figure that, every meeting we have, we're going to hold in the middle of a cemetery because that's when everybody shows up, I guess. I don't know. But, I know probably many of you have, in fact, I recognize many of you have participated in the visioning process that we had for the brewery property itself now 2 summers ago. And again, what came out of that was an action plan. One of the first steps in that action plan was hiring a project manager, but also doing a number of different studies, looking at opportunities to try and position that property for the future redevelopment. That stuff is going on, but tonight is not focusing on the brewery property itself. It's focusing on the neighborhoods to the north and south, or I should say the business districts as well, to the north and south of the actual brewery property. So that's really the focus of tonight and this exercise that we're doing here. Before we get started tonight, I just want to acknowledge I saw at least a couple of elected council members. Are there Tumwater council members here? If you could raise your hand. Joan Cathy and Nicole Hill are here. They live in this area. So thank you for coming. I thought I saw Commissioner Karen Valenzuela around as well in the middle there. So also we've already created a focus group. I'd ask the members of the focus group are helping us as well raise their hands just to show. These are folks that either own some land in the area or live in the area or have a business in the area that we thought would be a smaller working group that we would work with to help set up these individual meetings. So thank you all for taking your time to come this evening. I know your time is valuable. I want to get on with this meeting, so I'm just going to stop there and turn it over to Jason Robertson. He's a local business owner here and specialist in this sort of thing, and he's going to introduce staff and lead us through tonight's agenda. So thank you all again for coming this evening. I'll be talking to you a little bit later tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see if this thing will stick in here. So Again, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's for the camera, standing room only. Tumwater Cares, and a lot of Olympia apparently. Recognize some of you. I want to just kick this thing off. I want to introduce my team. We have a multidisciplinary team working with TRPC in the city on this project. And first thing I want to do is acknowledge our city partners, which are Tim Smith, Planning Manager, Jay Eaton, Michael Matlock, John Doan, and Michael Matthias, as Mayor mentioned. Everybody's trying to coordinate on this. And this project, as the Mayor said, is an extension of the brewery visioning effort. And the Mayor said that one of the goals is to be prepared for the brewery redevelopment. And the corollary to that is if the brewery redevelopment comes in phases over long periods of times, that the district still rises up and becomes what it can be. So part of our team, our design lead is Sarah Architects, represented by Michelle Marks, who is answering your land use questions. The SCJ Alliance, Perry Shea and George Smith are here. They're transportation engineers. They know about bike lanes, roundabouts, speeds, connections. And then Echo Northwest, Ann Fifield is here. She is our market expert because whatever we come up with has to be based in fiscal realities. And then I want to thank the Thurston EDC, who started the project off by visiting all the area businesses and making sure they got their input early on so that they're involved the whole way. And then, of course, this project is being funded, like several throughout the community, through a HUD grant that Thurston Regional Planning Council secured. So thank you, Thurston Regional. So just to kind of help focus tonight, this is open house number 1. All the team has done right now is compile what we call an existing conditions report. And most of you saw the boards in the foyer and here in the meeting room tonight. And we've done some analysis of market conditions, transportation. And each of our team members is going to give a very brief presentation on those things in case you skipped the boards. Joe, I saw you sitting in here eating cookies early. And after that, we're going to turn the floor to you, and we're going to start collecting your ideas. Just quickly, the goals are to help you focus tonight. Not only be prepared for brewery development, but improve the transportation system. One of the things we did at the very beginning of this project is we took what's called a walkability audit. We got very wet, and we had to wait a long time to cross the street. And we also want to make sure that existing businesses continue to thrive, but allow for new investment opportunity to breathe more life into the district. We want to foster a walkable, attractive design that invites people here. It's a community center for 2 communities. It could be argued as the heart of Tumwater, but it's also a gateway between Olympia and Tumwater. And then I think we want to make sure that we have the right land uses. And one of the things that we're going to do, one of the reasons Sarah Architects is our design lead, is they are really good at code zoning stuff, form-based code. And so there's different ways to structure your land use to allow for more creative uses of property. And so we hope to look at that over time. Just a quick second on this. So we realize that this brewery district is a connecting piece. It's connecting not just the city of Olympia, but it's connected to Capitol Lake, to the Capitol campus, to Capitol Boulevard, which has a similar project going on. So we're going to be aware of the regional context that we're planning under. The timeline is really about a year from now. We hope to get to a planning commission to look at implementing design codes. Along the way, we're going to have 3 more community open houses. The next one, we're hoping to come to you in June with sort of a response to what you give us tonight, and that's a vision, goals, and development scenarios for the district. So we'll take your feedback tonight, craft those items, kind of paint a picture, or a couple of pictures of the way it could be in the future, and that'll be the focus of discussion at the next open house. We'll refine that and come back in the fall for a 3rd open house to help pick a preferred scenario. This is what we want to do, and then by early next spring, have an implementation plan. That's the goal if everybody gets along. So with that, I want to invite Michelle up here, and she's going to talk a little bit about places that have done this successfully so you can start getting the creative juices going.
Hi. So as Jason said, I'm Michelle Marks. I'm with Sarah Architects, and we are the land use and planning and urban design lead on the project. And I do want to really briefly walk through a couple areas we've looked at from across the country that have successfully redeveloped, repositioned some of their auto-oriented commercial districts, and kind of look at it as a precedent for strategies that we might consider for the Brewery District. So this is Franklin Boulevard in Eugene, Oregon. And our firm looked at this. The top picture shows current conditions. It's a kind of a typical 5-lane, auto-oriented arterial, and the community really wanted to look at ways to increase pedestrian activity, generally make the area a more attractive place to walk, live, and shop. And so we looked at strategies for improving the streetscape itself, the public right-of-way, in order to create more of a sense of place. And so the bottom image shows the changes that occur with some simple landscaping improvements in the right-of-way. And then some additional images, what happens when you add street trees to that landscaping. And the idea is as the street and the public realm itself becomes a more attractive place that people want to be, hopefully the private landowners take advantage of that public investment to help really finish the transformation of the neighborhood. And while the city is still looking for funding mechanisms for building that streetscape, we have gone ahead and changed the zoning regulations themselves in the district. And what's resulted are some new developments. These are all buildings that have been built since the new zoning code was adopted, taking advantage of that new development code and the planned public improvements. So some real changes there. Likewise, this is the Denver neighborhood in Portland. This is also a neighborhood commercial district that was seeing some disinvestment, some buildings and some streetscapes that could be more lovely than they are now. And we came in and devised a right-of-way, a public realm, a scheme for improvement. And this is what it looks like built today. So a real marked change between the building face, the sidewalk, and the street itself. And actually, since the plan was adopted, the neighborhood has seen, I think, 18 new businesses open up in this once neglected area. So again, some real change just taken just by means of the public realm improvements themselves. Another neighborhood in Portland, this is the Hillsdale neighborhood. A lot of similarities to the Brewery District, actually. You can see from the photos, kind of some wide rights of way, some buildings that were built in the same era, kind of auto-oriented, strip commercial. And the neighbors and the business association here asked us to help them devise a redevelopment plan to create more public spaces, more pleasant sidewalks, and hopefully an environment that would foster a wider array of businesses. And what you see here is not just the plan we created, but that the list of implementation and action steps coded to that plan. And the most interesting part is that the neighborhood and the business association themselves decided to do what they could to help implement those action steps. So these are photographs of neighbors and business owners getting together on a Saturday morning to actually build these streetscape improvements themselves. They were able to get a local nursery to help donate materials. They worked with the city and got their shovels out and started working on the streetscapes themselves to real effect. Excuse me. And then finally, these are photos from New York City, so it's a slightly different scale community, but the idea is interesting. These are, this is actually something that we're seeing in cities across the United States, and that's taking areas of the streetscape that are no longer necessary for automobile traffic and reclaiming those and giving them back to pedestrians and creating public spaces, wider sidewalks, bikeways, seating areas, and parking strips. And the interesting thing here is that these improvements have been studied. So in New York City, at least, where they've done these streetscape reclamation projects, we've seen decreases in automobile traffic, increases in pedestrian traffic, and also decreases in retail vacancies and increases in retail sales as well. So some real marked changes there. Excuse me. Okay, existing conditions, what do we have now? So this is generally what we're calling the Brewery District. You'll see the area in purple here is the brewery site itself. And I want to emphasize that we are not proposing any changes to the brewery properties themselves. The areas that we are focusing on part of this project are the 2 commercial areas that you see highlighted in red here. And again, the idea is to get these commercial areas ready for whatever redevelopment does eventually happen in the brewery itself. So just a reminder, thank you. Just a reminder, what we do envision for the brewery. So a couple of summers ago, the community said they wanted to see something kind of regionally oriented, something larger scale, high visibility in this area called the Knoll, the number 1 here on the map. And then the area number 2, in the valley area, something more recreation oriented that takes advantage of the existing warehouse structures down here. And then a couple of maps looking at existing zoning conditions and existing land use. You can see most of the areas in our 2 focus areas are zoned commercial. There is kind of south of Custer here in the northern focus area, an area zoned mixed use where you see kind of a wider variety of single family homes and businesses, so more of a mix, but the rest generally general commercial. And some photos of what that commercial looks like today. For the most part, it's 1-story, auto-oriented commercial. In a lot of instances, perhaps most instances, there are maybe parking in front of the building, in between the building and the street. And then a lot of the site area is often dedicated to circulation, access, parking to vehicles themselves. So what you often see within a site is a building on a small portion of the site with the rest of the site dedicated to parking and access. And then as I mentioned in the mixed use area south of Custer, a slightly different building type here. It's a little bit, the building type is more single family detached homes, some of which actually contain homes. The other, in other instances, those homes are currently housing businesses. So a smaller scale development type down here. And then in the southern focus area, south of the park, kind of a wide variety of development types. There are some new buildings down in the bottom row here, relatively new, and then some more industrial uses, a couple of smaller commercial uses. And then this map is intended to highlight some of the topographic constraints that we're going to have to tackle as part of this project. I hope you can see. In a lot of areas, we have elevated roadways that are going to limit access and connectivity between areas within our focus area. We have some very steep slopes up along Capitol adjacent to the park, and then down by the valley and the warehouse and the mixed use area. So some real challenges in terms of how we're going to get folks from the neighborhoods to the brewery properties, between the focus areas, back and forth. So, and I think that's a good point to turn it over to Perry Shea, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of those access and connectivity challenges.
All right. Hello, everyone. Great turnout. Gotta move here. So our task on this project was, in preparation of this meeting, was really understanding kind of what the existing conditions of the transportation system. And when we talk about transportation in respect to this project, it's not just about movement of vehicles. It's really moving all people via whether that's walking, biking, on the bus, or driving. And so holistically, we'll be looking at that throughout this study of how to incorporate all those elements into a multimodal plan that could really help transform how things work now in this particular area. This particular exhibit is showing sidewalk areas that are currently, I need to point, basically the yellow is basically where sidewalks currently exist. The blue are currently where bike lanes exist on the road, and you'll see from the exhibit, there are several areas where we don't have continuation, whether that's either sidewalks and or bike lanes. And a lot of that is because the existing rights-of-way and or roadways are constrained. Either the buildings are close, we got buildings up against the road, there's just a lack of room, there's the topographic challenges that Michelle had talked about. So one of the challenges and one of the things that we'll be looking at would be how to provide a better opportunity to infill, provide more accessibility to make it more attractive and conducive for people to either bike and walk. A few pictures. Currently, while there are sidewalks, I do want to preface that a lot of the sidewalks are up against the street. And as you walk through this corridor, and especially when you have on Capitol Way and Custer and Cleveland, it's not really inviting as when you've got traffic coming both directions, you're on the sidewalk and you're right up against the travel lane. And really, this is an old, the traditional design of really having narrow sidewalks up against the street side. Part of the things that we'll be looking at and getting creative ideas, hopefully from you folks, is how do we make that a more inviting opportunity, whether that's moving sidewalks out, adding planter strips, making them wider, making more connectivity, to make that more of an appeal. Because right now, while we do have sidewalk connectivity in generally a lot of the area, it's really not a kind of a convenient way to get through the study area. On the transit side, we actually have a really busy hub right up here, this transit center. A lot of buses coming in and out of here, a very popular mode and a very popular transfer station. And what you see in yellow are all the different places where you can actually get on the bus. And we also show all the routes. And these are exhibits that we had out in the foyer as you came in. So part of this is understanding how the intercity transit currently provides access, how we could build upon that as the development plan continues to encourage more of that type of use, and how that could basically tie into the different development plans and the overall transportation network. I do want to say on this graphic, we have, there's a lot of metrics in how we look at transportation, how effectively these systems are operating. And this particular graphic is showing from vehicle movement travel, vehicles traveling through the intersections. And if you see where you see green dots, that's really saying that from this particular metric that the intersection's performing well. That's also a perspective of what that means, what is well. But when you see a red or kind of a yellow, it means that we really have a constrained condition. And it's probably not surprising to see some of these right through here, kind of the heart of the corridor, where if you travel through this, traveling on Capitol and Custer, it's very constrained right now. It's very common during both, morning commutes and evenings and even shopping midday times where you actually are what we call queued, or queuing back into intersections or blocking access points, or you can't turn into businesses, which impacts them because of the amount of traffic that's coming through this particular area. The other locations that are, again, as I mentioned, maybe green, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're I'll call it preferred or an ultimate, solution set. They're wide intersections, they have weird angles, it's challenging to cross, especially down at the Safeway corner. We've got some really big intersections, long crosswalks. Those types of things are not real advantageous for pedestrians and or bikes to get through. And also it's challenging for vehicles to understand and basically understand all the different modes on the street, how to facilitate through the particular corridor. This is existing conditions. Now, when you start to look at what happens in 20 years, 30 years, we start to overlay more of the through traffic, commuter traffic, or just the infill in particular areas. This traffic is going to get much higher than it is today. So how do we manage that? And that'll be part of the task that we're going to be asked to do is what are some of those solution sets that will deal with that particular issue? Access, this is probably, everybody that drives this, it's somewhat challenging to know where I need to go. How do I explain to somebody that wants to come to my house or business that they have a business area to get off the freeway, on the freeway, across the bridges? It's very circuitous, it's challenging, and there's limited opportunities. If you actually want to get south on I-5, we all know you can't do it from here, right? You've got to go down to Capitol Trosper or further south. Northbound I-5 or 101, this is all problematic, during current times now. So how do we make more enhanced circulation or access improvements to this particular area, just to have more improved operations within the particular sub-area? Part of the challenge is we just don't have a lot of options east-west. We've got topographic challenges. We don't have much being able to cross through the valley floor, you know, so how do you really circulate through here? And there are a lot of parks, rivers, beautiful amenities, really make this whole thing a wonderful place to be at, but it actually restricts the ability to, you know, circulate and get traffic movement, all modes of traffic moving outside of the existing facilities that we currently have. This one is basically just saying that there's other intersections that, and I talked about this on the previous slide, that still needs some work, you know, to improve what we call the geometric look of it, or tightening up the intersections, or reducing the width of the roads, providing more crosswalks, shorter distances on the particular streets for people to cross to make it more inviting, those types of things. So, and I'm actually excited about this particular area because we feel there are a lot of solutions that could be really implemented, what I'll call the low-hanging fruit, that are really could be meaningful without really big dollars. Because anytime you talk about transportation improvements, usually talking about a lot of money. And not to say that some of these will be expensive, but we feel like there's could be a pretty good strategy to make some really meaningful improvements over the next few years, assuming that there's money available to do that. And I do want to say that one of the things that we will be looking at as well is how do we provide some additional access points to our circulation options to improve that, and to really, because right now all the traffic coming through here funnels into Custer and Cleveland and Capitol. It's a real problem. I don't think anybody that drives through that in this room would say otherwise. Some of the alternatives that we had explored earlier, the city had explored earlier, 8 to 10 years ago, was, you know, maybe the potential of a cross connector that actually we call the East Street connector that would actually pull a bunch of traffic away from the Custer area, more or less the commuter traffic, to really provide more of a balanced approach of what's coming into the particular zone, to make it more livable, attractive, easier to get around even if you're not driving. We'd also be looking at other solution sets of, you know, how do you get access back into the brewery properties as well. And this kind of shows that as well, dealing with the different connectors. Don't worry about those lines. They're a fat line. It doesn't represent any particular alignment. It is a line to say that's an option that may be explored. And that's transportation.
I'm Ann Fifield. I'm a senior economist at Echo Northwest, and my job on this project is to talk about all of the market issues that affect redevelopment of an area and make sure everything is grounded in market realities. And the trouble with my line of work is that all the pretty pictures are not part of my stuff. We just get bullet points. Got to talk to Perry and Michelle for the pictures. And so what I did was I looked at the existing conditions about the economy in your community, and then also how the market was affecting individual uses. And this on these slides is very boiled down. Over there we've got 4 boards about the economy that have a lot more detail than what's here. And one of the first things that is very striking about Tumwater and Thurston County is your economy is actually doing very well. And I suspect it may not feel that way to a lot of you, but relative to the rest of the country, your economy is doing really well. And that's a real advantage because it means that you're not fighting an uphill battle for market issues. You can go with the flow because it's a desirable community to have a business in, and it's a desirable community to live in, and it continues to grow both the economy and the population, which makes any kind of redevelopment of anything a lot easier. Let's see, the population that is coming, you have a population that is moving here. It's a mix of incomes and a mix of age groups. It's and so you have low-income households and you have relatively high-income households coming to this community, and so it makes it's a real community. It's not a really homogenous group of people. It's a diverse group of people, which makes it more of a community. A notable feature about your population is you have a relatively high portion of elderly households. Households older than 75 years you have more of those than Thurston County and more of those than Washington State. You also have a notably high portion of younger households that are adults just entering the labor force, age 20 to 35. That's a big portion of your population relative to the rest of Thurston County. Another notable thing is you have a very high portion of renters in this community, much higher than the rest of Thurston County. And then an important factor is what I've said here is Tumwater exports goods and services. And what that means is you guys sell a lot of retail goods in Tumwater. You sell many more retail goods than the community of Tumwater buys. And so it's not like you're exporting it to Canada, you're exporting it to Olympia and the other neighboring towns. And that matters for what you can offer in terms of additional retail. All of those factors and a number of others that get fed into the existing conditions work sort of point to some interesting direction that this focus area can build off of. Based on the population that you have, the income levels, and the number of renters that you have, there's a real opportunity to offer increased density housing. And that can mean a variety of things. Many places, high density housing can mean a really tall building. It can also mean maybe a 3 or 4 story building. It can be a rental complex. It can be ownership complex. And I think a real opportunity in Tumwater is ownership, high density housing that could particularly focus market to elderly households. There's a lot of households in this community, I would bet, that have lived here for decades. They moved here when they were young, they raised their children, and now they're living in their single family detached home, and they don't want to leave Tumwater. But it's hard to maintain a single family detached home when you start to get much older. And there's not that much opportunity in this town to maybe move into a townhouse or a small condo that doesn't have a yard that would allow you to live independently until you're much older and stay in the community that you've been in your whole life. And this is one opportunity for this focus area. That could be a market that would work here. The area is also a very good fit for retail goods and services, and it's obvious because you have a lot of retail goods and services already being very successful in this area. The context for retail right now in the global economy is bricks and mortar retail continues to struggle and figure out where it's going in the face of internet sales. More and more households buy more and more goods over the internet every year. And so you don't want to focus too much on large retail spaces. In this area, it's not appropriate for a large retail space. You've got Home Depot, you've got Walmart, you've got all those big box stores. They wouldn't fit here. It would be very strange to try to get a big box store here. The smaller retail that's appropriate for the area is exactly what you have. The kinds of goods and services that require face-to-face interaction with the customer. Things that are fresh, food, freshly prepared food, pastries. Fresh flowers is another fresh thing that's difficult to do off the internet. Drive-by convenience, you have a coffee shop, you have a gas station. You have to do that in person. It's hard to buy that stuff off the internet. And also services such as getting your hair cut. You can't do that over the internet, and that's a service being provided here, and it's something that should continue to be a focus as a good use for this area. Another kind of service that's really well used in this area are medical services. There's dentists, there's chiropractors, there's masseuses, and there are also a lot of financial services that tend to require face-to-face interaction. Another good use in retail space is recreational activities for children. It should also say older folks as well. Just very nearby, there is a big recreational facility that's focused on the elderly population. But you know, it's raining outside. It is another time I'm in Tumwater. It's just pouring outside, and you've got a bunch of little kids. It's so hard to do stuff outside. So any of these places, these kind of bouncing gyms, indoor activities for kids, is a really good retail space that bricks and mortar will continue to survive on and thrive on in the face of competition from the internet. this area, it's clear, it provides very good access to a lot of traffic. The average volume of traffic going by is great for a lot of retail, and that's one reason the Safeway continues to be accessible. There's a coffee place. So all those businesses are taking advantage of all of this traffic. All of that traffic is also a huge problem because it makes it really difficult to walk from the Safeway to the coffee place and then go get your teeth cleaned. It's very difficult to cross the road as a pedestrian. You want to pull in and park, do what you need to do, and then get out. And there's an opportunity with some physical improvements to make it so it's easier to conduct multiple retail activities within a single trip if there were more pedestrian connections. And so I think that's the summary of it. All right, all yours.
So I want to take a few minutes to let you know what we've heard so far. So everybody's starting at the same spot when we get going here in just a minute. So I think I mentioned earlier the Thurston EDC did some interviews, and we've done some follow-up interviews with other businesses since that time. If we haven't talked to you, we're working on it. Maybe you weren't home. But wanted to share with you a couple of the things people said. You know, to echo Ann, everybody loves the traffic. If you have a business down here, you usually chose to have your business there because it's easy to get to. People drive by, they see you, that's a positive thing for business. And the only thing that people don't like about traffic is congestion. That was a joke. Of course, the vacant breweries, no surprise, is something that people are worried about, but also vagrancy. And people have different words, that's why it's in parentheses, but there's different things. There's been vandalism or people hanging around or, you know, taking over the Safeway parking lot, any number of things. People would like to see a mix of restaurants, and John Doan did his own walking survey. What are there, 13 places to eat already? 5 minutes of walking. People like to see a mix of businesses, all kinds, just more vibrancy. The housing issue was interesting. When I was reading through people's reaction, what do you think about more housing? And you can see the odds there, or the percentages were really in support of more housing because that means more patrons on foot, right? But the people who are opposed, you know, they usually have pretty good reasons. You know, I'm concerned if you have more housing here, that means they're just going to take more of the parking spaces, and that problem is going to get worse. So, but those are trade-offs and considerations. People like to see some sort of a destination, not necessarily a big mega complex where you come, but something neat to do that brings people in, and everyone recognizes all the jewels that are within this district, from the Schmidt House to the Tumwater Falls Park and the river itself, and even, you know, the trail under back to Capitol Lake, and there's a destination, there's a river walk feel to it. How do we build that out? So we're going to be doing some more public involvement through this process. Like I said, in total we'll have 4 forums like this, but we'll also be doing a web survey. If you didn't, you're signed up now, whether you wanted to be or not. We have placed chips in all of you as you came through the door tonight. So, not really. I know some people are really literal. We hope to send you an email and let you know when there's a web survey. When we start getting into the preferences stage, do you like this better or this? We heard a lot of feedback at the Forum 1, you know, what's your favorite idea, those sorts of things, so we'll be alerting you that way. Later in the process, we'd like to do what's called a Main Street workshop, which is just a way to help businesses get organized. What can you do to kind of implement some of the strategies that come out of this? You saw the people with shovels and spades in Portland. You know, I'm not going to say anything. The city's probably thinking, why are you showing that? I don't want them tearing up the street. Project fact sheets, direct mailings, and e-blasts and PSAs. Let me show of hands real quick. How many people heard of this meeting tonight through a TRPC list? How about city? TRPC is Thurston Regional Planning, Sustainable Communities. Michael Cade is the only one. All right. Okay, there's 4. Shout out other ways you heard about it. Direct mail? Facebook? Written in a bathroom? That's weird. Okay. All right. With that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to switch to the public engagement part of this. And so can all the facilitators who volunteered to help out raise your hand so I can start thinking about that while I'm talking? You're clustered. We talked about this. That's good. So each of your tables, we're going to try to get 6 to 8 of you at tables, and we're going to have a volunteer facilitator who's going to work through a series of questions with you over the next 50 minutes. And here are the questions. Remember where we're at tonight, where this is the grassroots. We want any idea is fine tonight. We're going to start making you react to things later on. Tonight is your chance to get that great idea in there. So we want to know, what do you love about this district that you don't want to change? Or what has to change? Second, what do we do about economic vitality activity? How can we stimulate the economy in the district? 3, how about mobility, connectivity, and safety? Whether you bike, walk, skate, whatever, however you get around, how do we make it better? And then finally, you guys are going to spend about 15 minutes on each of those questions, and then we want the group to pick a spokesmodel and 1 to 2 top ideas to share back with the group. So if we tried to do this as one big group, we'd never get anywhere. But if you do it in small groups and everyone shares their best idea, everybody might get a little inspired and go home happy. Okay, so now facilitators, raise your hands. Well, now nobody's at the table. Okay, so facilitator is going to walk to a table, and if you don't have one, let me know.
How long do people have?
50 minutes, 50. Oh, one last thing. The facilitators are going to take words on the notepads, but you have maps on your tables with tracing paper. Draw your ideas if that's how you do it better. So here's how we're going to do this. So we have under a half hour to get through 15 tables, 14 tables. So you really do have 2 minutes tops. If you can get your presentation done in a minute, we will consider your idea more important. So, yeah. I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with Miss Sarah Black, who is just an absolute professional report outer. Are you reporting out, or do you pick somebody? Oh, it's him. He's a focus group guy. He knows how to do it. So I'm going to just give you the microphone, which is a mistake, and then I'm going to try to get it back and get through all the tables. Here we go.
Well, what I want, I'm just kidding. Our top 2 recommendations, one was to re-engineer the transportation flow on Cleveland Avenue. The north part of the Safeway parking lot, maybe have as an entry and exit, and then sort of block off Cleveland Avenue with the exception of transit up to the south exit right past the gas station, Safeway gas station. So that make that more pedestrian friendly, kind of turn it into a plaza, reorient parking on the other side of Cleveland in front of those small businesses, and maybe move the parking out back of it, where there's a lot of parking out that's currently not really used that often, and then make it just more walkable, more aesthetically pleasing, plaza-like vegetation, kind of like some of the pictures we saw. Same number of parking that's used, but just reorient it and make it more user-friendly, not as wide, that type of thing. And Safeway wouldn't lose any, they still have the same access points, the businesses would still have the same access points, but between the access points to the parking lot, it would be more walker-friendly and just make it available to transit. And then again, the vegetation and the plaza light as well.
Excellent. Okay, I have to go out of order and I'll get lost. Who's the? Nick, yes? Here you go, Nick.
We had some of the same ideas as last group. Kind of beautify Cleveland Avenue through there, just north of Custer, between Custer and Capitol. Some street vegetation, potentially some diagonal on-street parking, which would both add parking and sort of shield pedestrians from the flow of traffic. That area might be an area where you could create more of a downtown, more of a center for the city, potentially street level retail and housing above, which would kind of close it in, make it a bit more cozy. And potentially look into adding some green space kind of in the bowl in the triangular area between Capitol, Custer, and Cleveland.
Great. Thanks. The bowl.
So we actually came up with like 4. Exit 103 from the south end going north, we wanted to use behind the meat market, more of a gateway to the city as opposed to just, oh, by the way, I just passed Tumwater and I see the brewery, but I can't get to it. So access that way a little better. We also thought that slowing down the traffic on Capitol, whether that be roundabouts or whatnot, if you can slow down the traffic, they can see what's there more. It'll also create a lot more of a user-friendly for pedestrians. So that would be a good one. Centralized parking, both in the north area and the south area. The north area having centralized parking instead of sporadic parking everywhere, so that you are forced to walk amongst all of the businesses instead of parking at one and then leaving. And centralized parking in the south area, more for the recreational, because as the Brewery District develops, there's going to be a lot of tourists and pedestrians wanting to walk from the trails and develop all those trails through there, so you have a lot more of a recreational space and developing that. So maybe there's a bike trail that goes from, starts there, goes up around Capitol Lake, comes back down, goes down the river a little bit, and then comes back, making that more of a hub. And then also making it mixed-use residential, so that it comes to the street a little more, but also providing those spaces that they talked about earlier for the home.
Okay. Linda.
So one of the things that was really important to our group was to value the history of this area, which includes, maybe I don't need a microphone, which includes the, our American Indian history, being the first American city on Puget Sound, and our brewery history all exists in this place. We would like to keep that as the theme as we go through with all this. We would like to see the river scape and the return to the river have actually green corridors that take us down to the river, not just at the river, but get us to the river on green corridors. We have talked a lot about the transportation, as everyone has. We want it to be functional, rational. We want places where people can get out of their cars and get into the streetscape. And we also we talked a lot about building up around the Safeway area. That seems like an ideal place to focus your senior housing, because seniors do like to be able to walk to the grocery store. And appreciating that Safeway is already there for a walkable community is a great asset, because most of the time that's missing.
Thanks. Larry, were you here? Yes. Okay.
So we think that it's really important
to unleash the potential of this area, to try to do our best to make sure that those trips, those car trips in this area are intentional car trips instead of just having to come through there. That's not really helping those folks or other folks who are trying to get there. So rerouting Yelm Highway, so instead of it curving north and becoming Cleveland Avenue, and that's your only option, connecting that straight across to Trosper. That will remove the car trips that really, those drivers don't really want to be there. They could continue if they were coming to the Tumwater Square area. So that reroute, that'll reduce volumes and with maybe treatment of roundabouts at North Custer, Cleveland, Capitol, Custer, and Cleveland, Capitol, in the little Bermuda Triangle, as we experienced. So that'll bring volumes down. We won't need as much pavement for storage of cars because roundabouts have better throughput. And then we can make sure that we're having better non-motorized access. That in and of itself will help with that. But non-motorized access to and from the neighborhood, especially so they can access food and the shopping and businesses there. We also really feel it's important to increase transit convenience and access. Obviously, it's a really important transit hub, but we need to just integrate that better for the convenience of transit users as well as other folks there. And lastly, because of we're very sensitive to the historical nature of this area, we want a beer garden. We all agree that's a top idea. Just a moment.
Well, I think this has been discussed before, but it's worth emphasizing because it's really, really important. The Tumwater Square area is really dangerous. For those of us who walk and bicycle, that can't be emphasized enough that there's got to be some safety improvements there. That road is, Cleveland right there is a rather wide road. It could be narrowed, and you can put, bus pullouts so that you can actually have a transit center that works. The other thing is there's no connectivity in our existing shopping area. There's all these shops along Capitol that no one knows how to get to. I feel sorry for those poor businesses along Custer who, they always come up with these great business ideas. I pass by them every morning or every day, and yet I have no idea how to stop and get into them. Ironically, there's a lot of parking in this area, but nobody knows about it because it's not marked, it's not managed, it's not developed, and there's no connectivity between the parking that is there and the stores, which is probably why nobody uses them. And then the one thing there's two things that we also talked about. Nobody's mentioned yet, we call it the Western Meats neighborhood. Western Meats is a real icon for those of us who live here. Several times each year we have to park and hike into it. There really needs to be better access at Western Meats, and there's also got to be some better parking. And the other thing is in the Bates neighborhood. This is the one where Pellegrini's is located. Gunderson's has really stepped up. They're helping them out to provide parking. But there's all kinds of businesses in that area which, they're there because it has low rents and it's doable. The city needs to make that a home occupation zone area and to also allow some parking there. That will help the businesses along, is it Custer? So if you could park in the Bates area, it'd be easy to walk across the street. And it would also maybe open that area up for things like bike shops, barber shops, hair, exactly. They could maybe even, who knows, become an artist community that might even put Tumwater on the map.
Bill.
That's all we came up with.
All right, we're gonna have someone come around and try to tape down your sketch paper so it doesn't get blown away when everybody gets up. And now, just as an example, Bill's group just lost 3 ideas for going over 2 minutes. No, just kidding, Bill. Yeah, okay?
Well, I don't know that our group came up with a whole lot of different ideas. We're kind of going around and we're all talking about kind of the same things. We thought that it was really important to have, create some gathering places, plazas, that type of thing, where people can actually hang out and live and go eat some baked goods and have a cup of coffee, and that ideal place would probably be over in the Safeway area that we talked about, making that more pedestrian friendly and beautify it. We thought that it would be really nice to have some condominiums, some nice condos for senior citizens for 50 and over that would have a nice view of the river and walkability down, green spaces down all along the river area. But we did think that it was important to keep the height of the buildings at 2 stories in that core area. We really didn't want to see high-rise 3- and 4-story buildings in that area. So consequently, we thought about a mixed use, retail on the bottom, housing on the top, but consequently because of that, we really need to do some housing issues. Is probably primarily our focus. We thought it might be really nice to have a community center for senior citizens somewhere in that area, and a place where they could actually maybe have some electric carts that they could use and drive in the Safeway parking lot somehow to be able to get from their homes to their the grocery store in a safer way. Some of that, maybe a public library, might not be a public library, but it might be a kiosk where, people could, go order books from Timberland's library system and pick them up every day and that kind of thing. So, more access to that.
Can you just pass it to the next
So we had a few, we talked about a lot of the same ideas that have come up, but some highlights include improved connections between the Carline North neighborhood and the residential district, the business district. Ensure that there's some buffer there between both landscape and some perhaps setbacks for buildings between the neighborhood, residential area and the business district, but ensuring that there are pedestrian, especially pedestrian and bike connections between there, so there's access that's available. We talked about public artwork and public space in the business district, whether it's in where the Safeway parking lot area is now, because that could pull in people to the neighborhood. Also, perhaps for seniors, if you use that space, or also perhaps in that area that the pit, the valley there in the middle, across on the other side of Cleveland. And a few other points. We talked about perhaps a gateway, some better entrance between Tumwater and Olympia there at Carline and Capitol, and also think about the intersections because they are a problem both for pedestrians and for traffic. Maybe a roundabout there at Custer and Capitol, and improved pedestrian access at the Cleveland intersections as well. And then yes, more trees. There's really a real dearth of green in that entire business district, and being able to add that will make it much more walkable feel, just a better, more livable feel to it. Regardless of how much traffic is removed, the trees will add that sense of space and of naturalness that is lacking. And then here's a vote for the beer garden from this table.
So we had a lot of the same ideas that everybody else had, but If you look at Capital, Cleveland, and Custer, at times it starts looking like a capital cluster. So that's so the capital cluster area was in dire need. And the pit, where it's all sunk down, one of us had the idea of actually building over that, having parking down in the pit and then building over it so it doesn't look like a pit, and you can infill there. And behind Safeway, or in front of Safeway, over like where the mason jar is, the safe Subway sandwiches and teriyaki place over there. The local neighbors around that area, we have several here, really do use that area a lot. Those of us who don't live right by it don't even really know about it, don't go there that much. But we thought it could be redeveloped with 2 or 3, maybe even 4-story buildings with residential up above and commercial down below, and have maybe even more restaurants and more accessibility. Let's see. That was the pit. I'm sorry. Okay, so the taller buildings were in the pit, not over in front of in the cluster over there. Let's see. Was that all of it? The big 3 intersections around Capitol Cluster all need to be addressed, and the car line intersection. We have somebody who walks on Sunset and is frequently cut off because people going on Capitol Way to Car Line north act like it's a free right-hand turn and forget that there's Sunset right there, and have had a lot of near misses. The new building there has cut down visibility and has made it feel even less safe. And so maybe some more explicit no right turns or something on the car line. So there's a lot more, but I'll stop.
Thank you. Our main thing was having a gateway between the 2 sections. The reason that town doesn't work so well anymore is because I-5 sort of cut it in half. So having these 2 connect makes it a more dynamic situation with having good through flow between the 2 areas. We were thinking that we could build in transportation hubs and recreation so that you accept what Tumwater is. It's a flow through for a lot of traffic, but it's also a home to a lot of people. So maybe a park and ride, and then you can also have parks with that. So that would sort of make Tumwater a hub by giving it a center where people could, we did ignore the red zone a little bit. But if you have somewhere where people could have like a park and ride, you can move the bus station over, you would have a lot of opportunities to increase capacity of what Tumwater could be. The other thing we did agree with was the housing is kind of weird. You do need more transitional housing. There seems to be a lot of rental space, or you can buy a house. Now, this did pertain to a lot of the older people, but I think, if you start out as a middle-aged person and want to go to a condo, it also works for younger people wanting to go from condo to the house. So any mixed-use housing would get used by people going up the scale and then coming back off the scale. So you would benefit a lot by having transition. If I rent, there's no way I could own. So what do you do? And it's the same coming back down. There's nowhere you could go unless you want to rent again, which is basically renting a house so you know better where you are.
Well, ours is fairly boring. It encompasses everything else Paul talked about, and those who haven't published it are the same. We got 2 things. People access. All modes. Walk, bike, car, bus, whatever it is, are really critical to both these, the north and the south area. And we talked, extensively about adding density to each of those areas. Integrating business, residential, and commercial densities. And I think that sums up what we came up with, and I don't know that that's in conflict with anything anybody else has said to this meeting.
Our table was primarily focused on safety issues, again, from the pedestrian various modes, but specifically improving pedestrian safety within the district at road crossings, transit stops, and within shopping areas by the inclusion of audibles, things like audible signals, differentiating pavement colors. Good examples of this are the Lacey Transit Center, the Olympia Transit Center. We've got white concrete next to black pavement to distinguish and make that easier to navigate. Things that came up in our discussion were things like typically you want to see tree wells and other amenities, cafes with people sitting on the sidewalk, yet folks with canes or they can't navigate those very well, those sometimes become impediments. So while planning for those types of uses, also considering pedestrian safety issues for all and folks that might have certain impediments, especially using canes and whatnot. Talked about a little bit about higher density housing being clustered in those orange areas, sort of in the core, so that you can preserve neighborhood feel further out towards the existing neighborhoods, towards Olympia High School, Tumwater Hill, and somehow clustering and having more high density, whether it be high rise, medium rise, or whatever. And then right on the edges, I'm not describing it very well, but along Capitol Boulevard and through those areas. And then just the third thing is just connections of trail systems, both internally, pathways and whatnot for shopping, but also externally, there are some regional trail systems that kind of convene in these areas. So there are some highlights of what we talked about.
Okay, we're kind of on the same page with pretty much everything else that was said today. The kind of primary focus of our discussion seems to be on the human access factor and wanting more and better access, whether you're pedestrian or on a bicycle, through a lot of the means that were already discussed. We talked about the roundabout option at Capitol Way and Custer, as well as North Street and Cleveland. Something to slow down the traffic through Capitol Way. That's like a freeway, it's like a miniature I-5 through there. Definitely not friendly for bicycles or anyone on foot. So along those lines, better bike and pedestrian amenities. Another idea we had was a streetcar either on Capitol Way or on the existing rail that would connect this area to downtown, to the market, basically. And that, are there 3 ideas? Is there anything else? Farmers market also, and a microbrewery. Yeah, coffee house. Moving the current Tumwater Farmers Market into this area somewhere, which would also encourage local retail, local sales, local business, and then another destination for us that live in the area that can walk there, or anyone who wants to drive to the area that use foot traffic to get around. So we like the pit idea, some sort of transformation there. Park, not parking, but a park maybe. On. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Our emphasis focused on mobility, balanced mobility, pedestrian, transit, automobile, and linkages between uses and between neighborhoods. And I think we're advocates of the Riverwalk idea. That had a lot of appeal here. So that's it.
Well, I think top idea. Thank you, guys. I don't want to spend a lot more time here. I want to really thank you. This is a huge volume of information, but I assure you we've done it before. We massage it and we come back with some options and we take it the next step further. And then you tell us if we have it right or wrong or how to tweak it. We have a lot of competing interests to balance. A couple of themes that I heard tonight is that constant battle between local and through traffic. right? You know, you stop traffic and you kill a person's business, but and you help the pedestrian, it's a nice place to be, but then the business goes out of business and it's more. So it's like finding solutions for that is going to be really important. So a rational transportation system, I thought that was a good quote, we'll use that. There's a gateway and a hub concept that I think we can build on. The mixed-use housing, finding the right place for that, the right market, made it a good topic to look deeper into. And then internal, external trail options. So I think that was a great way to describe that too. And I was getting a little tired at the end, but I think there's a new microbrewery called the Valley Cluster Pit.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to let you know, we'll be sending you a notice when we're going to have the next public meeting. We'll send propaganda between now and then as well. And I just want to allow Mayor Kmet to say any final words.
Thank you, Jason. Great job, everyone. Exciting stuff. We want to respect your time. We'll probably, I think we're talking sometime June timeframe, so think about that. Is when we'll have a next session. I am. Okay, they are. There is a evaluation form here. We'd ask you to take a minute to fill that out before you leave. We know your time's valuable. We really appreciate you taking your time to come this evening. Thank you, everyone. Please join our website and stay in touch.